Hello, this is Artur Gwasnikov, and this is part 4 of Delzhi in 44 letters, where we're going to look at the fourth letter of the Delzhi alphabet, which, as I mentioned previously, is a writing system that I created about nearly a decade ago when I was really inspired to make it, just to reflect my tribe's cultural history and legacy, and a language that, even though it still exists in some forms, for us locally, it's been extinct for quite a long time. And so this is sort of a way to give a visual presence to some of the ideas and the phonology behind it. And it can be used for any language, including Revival Dena'ina. So let's go into the fourth letter right away. This is actually the third time I'm recording it because my mind wanders so much. There's so much into this one, but I will do my best to keep it short. The third letter is a sound that we use every day in modern American English, but we don't have a distinct written letter for it. And we use it all the time in the words cheese and chair. And if you are as old as I am, from the Savage Garden song, which says chicka cherry cola. So I'm talking about the CH sound, the ch sound. And the name of it in this system I've given it is chi. And I've written it a bunch here because, like I said, I'm recording this a few times just to try to get myself to be more succinct. So here's the regular version. Just make sure I have enough ink. Which is I'll go down here. Which is a small triangle, pointed down, and a long leg. And the lowercase version is the V of the triangle and a short leg. And when I first started doing lowercase, I was using just the full triangle, but it seemed too out of place. It looked more functional, like it was a misplaced punctuation mark of some kind. Now, the word chi comes from the Dena'ina word chica, which is a general word for wood, or firewood in this case. There are many names for different types of trees and wood, and based on size, quality, use. But this is one of the base words that we have for wood meant to be saved to burn, is chica. And this is where some of the things that I don't fully understand come in. I have two examples here of word phrases, which are words made in two parts, kind of like compound words, sort of, that both use chica, but they have adjectives. One is before the word and one is after. So over here on the right, the first one is nuli chica, which is wood used for a traditional steam bath. And over here on the left is chica kelly, which is fine quality wood. The word kelly has to do with a lot of words and phrases that are about gifts and value and preciousness. So I think it's really interesting that in one case, the adjective is for the purpose of the wood, in this case for a steam bath, nuli, which comes first. And then in the second case, the word heli comes after because it's a quality of the wood, not its purpose. And so whether or not that's intentional or based on different versions of different speakers and dialects, or maybe they are fully interchangeable in linguistic logic, I don't know. But I think it's really interesting, and I think it's a good example to show that when we say the word adjective, we frame it in the context of our own language. So in English, we are consciously aware to know that adjectives 999,000% of the time out of 1,000 always come before a noun. And likewise, this letter gives us a good opportunity to look at comparisons in other languages. That having the same writing system doesn't mean you have the same sound, and having the same sound doesn't mean you have the same writing system. This is all about writing as cultural convention more than it being a practical convention. It's not universal. So here's the sound CH, and in Scottish, I have the not equals to sound. We have the word loch, and that's that more throaty sound for lake, if you didn't know. And here's another form in Italian, which sounds more like our K. It's chiaro, which means clear or light. And I've been studying a lot of Italian lately. It's one of my favorite languages to look at. And also down here, which looks like the English word chat, but is actually can be found in French, the word for cat, or chat. And these are all three examples of ways which use that CH in writing, but not the same sound. And conversely, here's three ways that the sound can be found in the world, but not the same writing. So over here on the right is the word che from Russian, which looks like a rounded number 4. And Russian is very important because it has had a big impact in its colonial era on local language, and it's one of the markers of differences of this language and a lot of non-Dene languages in this part of the world. Over here is Greek, which sometimes uses it the same way, but there is a little bit more different way to say this. It's the letter chi. Fun fact, the Greek alphabet as we know it, that's most often associated with science and things like fraternities and sororities, is different from how people say the names of the letters in modern Greek. That's actually a little bit of a different thing. So here's the uppercase chi and lowercase, which goes below the baseline. And over here, I'm just going to call a letter because it's actually just a part of a different kind of writing system. But this is a symbol in Korean of what I will call the letter chiut. And, well, I guess you can call it a letter in this case. And chiut makes that CH sound that we have in English. And it's most often found in the word that we know, kimchi. And I happen to love kimchi, although I know it's not a universally loved dish. I happen to think it's wonderful. So to talk about the symbolism a little bit, firewood, as we know, is a major fuel source for colder climates and people in the part of the world. And it's also emblematic of our relationship to our primary landscape, which is coastal taiga, boreal forest-ish type of climate and habitat, where we really are connected to the trees. And this is the primary source of building material that our culture had historically. We don't have a lot of hard stone and only just some examples of soft metalworking, not a lot of things that have a lot of, strength in a way that could be used in that way. So almost everything is made of wood. And the artistic perspective comes in because the shape of chi comes from a cut piece of firewood, or chica, which like this shape here, which I've put a dot by. And I've just used the top triangle and one of the legs for brevity and abstraction. It still has the same idea. And even though I kind of associate firewood with hard work and chores and labor, and I'm so thankful I don't have to do that anymore thanks to other fuel sources, it is an important fixture of identity in people's homes. And definitely in Alaska and a lot of this part of the world, life is still somewhat very rustic, and for a lot of people, this is the primary fuel source still. And so it brings up a lot of important topics like loss of vegetation, climate change, logging, ownership, very big issues, especially for like people in my tribe who still try to find ways to exert ownership and restore autonomy. So it's really an important signifier of effort, of this is the base of what you do to put into your landscape to really cope with seasonality, I guess I could say. And that brings me to an expression that I like to share when talking about cultural discourse, not just for my people, but for a lot of minority and mixed cultures in the world, is to take things with a grain of wood. Similar to the expression, take things with a grain of salt. But to take things with a grain of wood goes beyond that, because wood, even though it's something that is important and it's symbolic and we sort of take for granted that it will be there, it's something that we have to use. If we build with it, it will be used until it rots and falls apart. If we burn it, it will burn away. It will no longer be wood. It will no longer exist, just be in some ash. And culture is like that. Culture is temporal. It always changes. There's always something to learn about your past, either long ago or recent. And some things that you identify with and celebrate might change over time. And they might change between family members. They might change between generations. And when you've been in a culture like mine, where these changes are just the order of the day, we've had many, many waves of incoming cultures and changes and political structures just in the course of 500 years. Sometimes it's hard to sit back and think about, okay, well, what do I think I identify as? What's something that I think I can contribute? And learning about a culture, especially one like ours, you have to take things with a grain of wood and understand that everything is temporal. Everything is what has, if many things have happened in recent history, those ripples are still active. They're still wavering out. That pond or lake or whatever it is still heavily vibrating, even though it seems like it's been forever ago. And so while people like us are still living through the vibrations, sometimes it's hard to remember that even cultures, like I've mentioned before, ancient Egypt, with these existing monuments and structures and pyramids and scripts and writing and things that are very well elaborately preserved, even perspectives about what a culture has that does exist physically wildly changes. We've learned so much through the study of Egypt and other ancient cultures, just how temporal culture is and how it changes depending on who's telling the story, who might be the leadership at the time, who did the most trading, who held the most value, wealth. And I think that that's something that we tend to forget when, if you're like a young me who's trying to learn about your culture and language and study phonetics and linguistics in school, you can't find a lot of material out there that's either accepted academically because it's authoritative, or if it even makes sense to you, does it apply to you? And it can be scary because sometimes when people study ideas and symbols and language, they can encounter things that are completely contradictory to something that they may have grown up with or experienced or learned for themselves. And that's where I think the artistic perspective comes in and why it's so valuable, because it allows people to express themselves abstractly, like in this very minimal way that I've done and in this system, to put forward their ideas and their symbols and create something that reflects that back to them. And it's almost like you can have an internal conversation with it. And only through that do people fully understand what the meaning of culture actually is, and how culture is actually not that big of a deal. It's something that we have an active part in shaping. We have an active part in naming it. We have an active part in contributing to it. And I think when I realized that years ago, that was such an important part of why I went into making this system. And I hope it's something that other cultures around the world can look at and think, oh, what is something that we can put out there that's based on these own perspectives that maybe doesn't exist anywhere else? Like, what do we know and have that we can't find in a book, that we can't do science and discover, that we can't learn from an archaeological dig, that we can't learn from advanced mathematics or even liberal arts, that we can't learn from history or social sciences or ethnographies? What's something that we want to contribute? And I think for cultures that are indigenous or minority or both or mixed, that's a really important question to ask, and to try to put aside everything what you know, at least momentarily, and think what you would like to put out there. And that's the thought I'm going to leave for this video. Thank you very much. I hope to see you in the next one.